Suffering, I'm talking about something subjective, very difficult to define, but what Judaism uses as suffering is really a shock for a person, something that he's been devastated. And the example that the Bible gives is Job. Job lost all his belongings, and then he lost all his children. He was really devastated. In Judaism is like what happened to Job. He carried on living, fighting, even quarreling with God, thinking that perhaps God will answer him, and at the end God answered him, and even he rose up and had more children and had a life more, another 140 years later. God sometimes doesn't punish a person, but gives him a trial. And when Abraham was commanded to give his son and kill him, and definitely that's suffering, 3 days to go without knowledge that you're going to stab and kill your own precious baby, that just now he's prayed for years and years to have him, and now he has to kill him. But all that was a trial, and it starts in the chapter there with, and God trialed Abraham. And the trial is to bring him up higher in a higher level. I would say that actually in Judaism, many times we are trialed. We feel as a chosen people, chosen I mean somebody, a people not more sensible or more clever or more defined, people who have to go through trials. We suffered so long in Egypt, and after so many generations, we suddenly got a new job to do. Our mission was, yes, you suffered, but now you're going to be a people that understands morally why slavery is terrible, how you have to be more righteous, how definitely people have to behave and have courtesy to one another and enjoy life and not to make other people suffer. We've got 2 books of Samuel. The first book of Samuel was when David wasn't a king yet. But all what he lived and how he suffered from the chasing of the king Shaul and being chased by the Philistines, and he's run from one place to another, is to feel confident later as to be a real king and understand how to become a stronger person. The worst suffering that any people have gone through was the Shoah, was the Holocaust. There's no explanation why we suffered so much. Was it a punishment? Was it a trial? Any explanation doesn't justify 6 million people, and more than 6 million people, the ones who survived and weren't killed, they suffered so much starvation and so much terrible humiliation. But we know something amazing happened 3 years later. After 3 years, we managed as Jews to come out from this terrible shock, and here we are building a nation. Are there any other people who can compete of being refugees like the Jews? The Jews have been the most refugees for the last 2,000 years. And even so, we put this behind us and we are starting a new start. Everybody knows Natan Sharansky, that was locked up as a Jew in the Soviet Union for 10 years, completely isolated. He nearly lost his eyesight because most of the days of those 10 years he was in complete darkness. Even after suffering for 10 years, and he didn't even know why he was suffering that, he came out built his life, came to Israel, and 15 years later became a minister in the politics of Israel, went and visited Russia after they invited him, and the most important place that he wanted to visit is where he was suffering for 10 years. And he smiled and says, you can see, suffering is not something that you have to wipe out. You can build yourself from suffering. That is an example of somebody who took the suffering and built himself completely the opposite and made himself a great person. Judaism is always trying to find faith. And faith means, yes, I was born crippled or blind or without money or in poverty, but it means that perhaps God wants me to show how I can overcome these things. You are suffering, but you show other people how you can overcome it. Judaism uses these sufferings as challenges, and with these challenges, it makes somebody lift up higher and to become to greater levels. Perhaps you are trialed, perhaps you are in the same category of a person that should be trialed and bring out his potential out higher. So when somebody loses his son, his baby, there's no justification for him to feel that he's down in the dumps. It wasn't his fault. He understands that God is trialing him, and perhaps to be a wise person to go to other people to help them in this difficult situation, because he's gone through that. So he can be the best psychologist that can help people to reveal and to overcome these terrible things. Suffering in Jewish life doesn't mean the end of life, doesn't mean that it has to be the suffering. It might be a shock or some tremendous outburst. From here onwards, you've got a new life.